Tolu and I grew up in Nigeria and moved over here as not young adults, but as teens. Um, Tolu actually, probably a young adult actually, by the time you actually moved here properly. And Nike and Camila, both of you, were born here and lived here all your lives. How do you think that's informed who you are, your identity?
God, that's so hard. Such a hard one.
Explain why it's hard to answer that question actually, and then maybe try and answer it. But I think I know where you're coming from, but it would be
it's a rub. Like, so I don't know what Cam's experience is being Bayesian and what the lens that gives, but Nigerians are very we have a really strong identity. We have really strong cultural. That's why a lot of, like, for instance, a lot of my West Indian friends, when I say, where are you from, they'll say England. I don't know any Nigerian. Even my children are the next generation. I was born here, my children were born here, and yet if you say to them, where are you from, they say Nigeria. I'm Nigerian. They don't say they're British. And so and I actually think that plays a positive role, that we do have a really strong sense of who we are. And I think that sets you up better. That sets you up well for some of the obstacles and things you face. But it's layers. So there's you're kind of a strong proud Nigerian, and then you're living in the UK. You've got that whole black and white dynamic. I grew up in South London, so I also had a African and West Caribbean dynamic. Those two groups didn't always get along as well, and there's that tension as well. So there was and that's what makes it a bit difficult to articulate the experience in a succinct way, because it's just myriad. There's so many so many layers.
Indeed. Cam, what do you think?
For me, I'll just say I didn't fully grow up here. So I grew up here and in Barbados.
Okay.
Which I think really helped me because I was surrounded by my heritage and my family in both instances. So, and we also went home a lot as well. So I think visiting, whether you do grow up in somewhere else fully, but once you visit where you are from a lot, I think that grounds you and keeps you rooted as well, because then you're still seeing your extended family members, you're seeing your culture. Even now I still go home regularly, or as regularly as possible. But yeah, like Nike said, it is very layered. Because for instance, my brother would have a whole different experience because he grew up completely in Barbados. Because when my mum found out she was pregnant with him, she was like, right, she wants him to have his full education there, because the education system in the Caribbean is totally different to the education system here. So but I think you have your pros and cons. I think like you said, I think for me, once you're surrounded by your family, like my mum is very, like, there's no mistaking she's from Barbados. She's very cultural, and I grew up with my family around me. So yeah, I think it definitely depends on how you're raised as well. So, and your surroundings, what you see, because I'm from South London. So, I mean, I was born in Croydon. So I grew up around, like, I saw Black people everywhere. So
yeah, it's very similar, because I grew up in Camberwell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing basically is you can ensure that your children have that identity, because I'm dealing with first generation children. My kids, like yours, Nike, actually identify as Nigerian. My son Nicholas had a supply teacher come to his school when he was in primary school, And apparently in the classroom, she was asking the kids where they were from.
Right.
And after the fact, I think a few weeks had gone by, we were having this conversation, and he happened to mention, I go, why was she asking that? Were you guys discussing geography?
Yeah.
Or he goes, no, they were just having a lesson, a normal math lesson, but for some reason she asked everyone where they were from. And to me, that was a bit weird, because my son's name in school is Nicholas. And you speak to him and he sounds absolutely British. So it would be weird to me to understand, why would this woman consider that he's from anywhere other than Britain, right?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, what did you say? He said, I told her I was Nigerian. I thought it was hilarious. And I laughed.
So she was right to assume.
It made me feel really happy, because I realized that he was very firmly rooted in his identity.
Yeah.
I didn't have an issue with that, regardless of whether other people had an issue with that. So I think it's really essential, that whole identity piece, for our children who are in the diaspora now, like you guys were. And so for me and Tolu, it's something that we have to consider to ensure that they don't lose that link. And like you say, Nigerians were very we're very in your face in that way, and we come together as community and we come together as family. So I think those things help. You know, my kids close their eyes and they can count 20 cousins. And like, oh, mommy, I hate Corona because I can't get to see Rayma, I can't get to see Abigail, I can't get to see, and like this, and I'm like, thank you God, because even though we're only 2 children in my family, they, as far as they're concerned, have 15 brothers and sisters that help them root themselves, you know. And do you think this is a consideration for our Caucasian counterparts? Does identity bother them?
I doubt it.
I think it does. In my corporate experience, I think it does, because it's either something that they are desperately trying and failing at trying to align themselves with, or it makes them so uncomfortable they don't want to see it. So in my experience, I've had people tell me, or trying to tell me about my country, because they visited it once or twice. Someone, you know, the moment they find out that I'm Nigerian, they're like, oh, I've been to Lagos, I've been to Abuja. Why are you trying to tell me about my country? I'm happy that you visited it and that you feel obliged to want to talk to me about it. That's great. But don't then proceed to try and tell me about my culture and about my country. That's where I draw the line. Don't do that. That to me is showing to me that you are uncomfortable with this conversation. I didn't come to you to tell me, guess what? I went to Devon last week and I saw the seaside. Gosh, there are loads of shells there. I didn't do that. I didn't, you know, I didn't make you uncomfortable by, you know, trying to align myself with you. I have to, so I don't know why. I don't know why they do it. I don't know whether they think that they have to compensate by trying to do that. To me, it's just an extension of colonialism, and I don't bring it around me. It's not necessary. Engage with me as a person. It doesn't, you know, if I then proceed to want to educate you about my culture, then you might want to say, oh, actually, I experienced that when I went to Abuja last week. Oh, I had a taste of that when I went to Lagos last year. That's great, but don't do it the other way around, because I wouldn't think to do that if I were doing it with you. So I do think it bothers them. I do think it's uncomfortable. And for me, it's like watching a train wreck when I see them trying to stutter words. I'm like, why is this uncomfortable?
How are you feeling at the moment with everything that's going on? We know what's happening. The world is on fire. How do you feel?
I'm triggered. I am so triggered by it, because I'll share with you an experience that I had this week. So my husband on Wednesday, I think it was, went down the road to the co-op just down our road at about 9:30. I think he realized that there was no milk in the house for the children's cornflakes the next day. It was about 9:30. I thought the kids were in bed. So I heard my 13-year-old just run down the stairs, and she was panicking. She was crying and she was panicking. And I thought something had happened in the room. Did she trip? Did she fall? What's going on? And the first thing she said to me was, "Where's Daddy going?" And I said, "He's gone down the road to the co-op to get milk." And the next words she said to me, I still hear it ringing in my head. She said to me, "It's not safe. Black men are being killed."
Oh, wow.
Now, this is a 13-year-old who knows at the back of her mind, when she's rational, that there is a difference between the US and the UK. She knows this. She knows this as a child in school, and she knows this because it's simple geography. It's two different countries. So she gets it. She's rational though. But a child who has seen, who's watched the news, who knows what's going on, who recognizes that her father is Black, who has herself experienced racism in school,
Okay.
could not be rational. She could not, in that moment, separate the fact that we're in the UK from the US. As far as she's concerned, a Black man has just been killed. My dad is a Black man. I am worried and I am scared. And so I gave her a long hug because I really tried very hard to stay rational and calm myself. And then we proceeded to have a conversation. Okay, tell me why you're worried. I tried to, to bring back the rationality about the difference between the two countries and tell her that her dad is safe. Her dad would never knowingly put himself in harm's way. We are fortunate here in the UK that it hasn't degenerated into people being killed in broad daylight. But I know that even though she heard the words and she was calm, because she herself has experienced racism at the hands of a teacher, by the way, she knew that it wasn't as simple as it's in two different countries. Racism exists, end of. Whether it's in the US and the form that it has taken in the US, or in the microaggression that we face here in the UK. It's all racism. And so we had a chat. We had a chat about when the teacher, accused her of potentially wanting to steal something out of his office, when all she was doing was walking by his office and stopped for a second to say hello to her white classmate who was already waiting at the teacher's request in his office.
Wow.
And when I went down to the school, I said, he asked a white student to wait in his office, had no fear that the white student would steal anything. But my Black child walks past his office, stops to say hello to her friend. He comes round, and the first words he says to her is, "What are you doing in my room? If anything goes missing, I will hold you responsible."
Wow.
Was he cautioned?
Yeah,
Was there
exactly. I was about to
anything?
ask that.
What
You know
happened?
me.
I know
But
who
you know
I'm
me.
talking about.
I am the crazy Black mother that exists. You know me. That book was written about me. I went down to the school the next day. I was in that school when they opened the gates. They didn't want me to speak to the teacher. And I said, it's good for him that I don't speak to him right now because it's not safe for him if I speak to him right now. I spoke to the teacher, the head teacher. I didn't get an apology until 4 days later. 4 days.
So that was going to be the next question. Do they recognize that is wrong? That is racist behavior? Is there a recognition about that?
Yeah.
Or
What did they say?
For me, the head teacher came back, felt obliged to send me their equality and diversity policy.
Oh
She
my
felt
God.
obliged to tell me about the training that the teachers have gone on. She felt obliged to tell me that this was a one-off. She felt obliged to tell me everything apart from the fact that this teacher stepped out of line and doesn't deserve to be a teacher. And I challenged everything. I said, I don't need to see your policy. because you farm that out to a consultant to write for you. Not interested. I don't want to see your training, because anybody can sit in front of a computer or in a classroom and listen to somebody else ramble on and not take in anything that is being said. And I don't need to hear about all of this wonderful stuff you're doing in your school. What I want to know is that, does this person understand the impact of what he said to a 13-year-old black-skinned child? Does he fully get it that he's stereotyping her? And does he understand that what he's planted in her, if I don't do something about it, will undermine her future to a great extent? Because he has planted negative seeds in her mind that will grow and will limit her if I don't get in there with a rake and uproot the damn thing and get rid of it. But does he understand that? And all I got was, we're really sorry, Mrs. Aluko, and this is going to be addressed.
Okay.
Esther then told me later.
We'll come back to you, because I want to actually delve deeper into that, and it was one of the things I want to discuss. But Nikki and Camelia, how are you guys feeling?
I think this particular episode, it's not like it's suddenly much worse than all the other deaths or other things that happened. Yeah. But it's definitely, and I suppose maybe like with the lockdown, I've been really reflective, and it's just made me, obviously I do feel really angry, and I feel quietly angry. You've got to mask it with being polite and being calm, and I feel really, really angry. And I look at everything that's happening. I look at everything that's happening in America and all the riots and and everything, and I just thought to myself that people are really angry, and they have a right to be angry. They have a right to be that angry. It's like the suffragette movement in the 1900s. 300 white women, not black. They stormed the Houses of Parliament. They set bombs. They blew up buildings. They were angry. They were like, you cannot treat us like this. They weren't, and the suffragette movement, there's a whole film about it. It's glamorous, it's great, that these women, they did these great things and everything. It's all right for them to do that. When you've got 400 years of people being brutalized, they were taken from their original homes in the most brutal way. They were, and then they were treated for 400 years brutally. They have children on these plantations. Children get to see their parents hanged, lynched, and and then it's coming on. You've got people who have. It's not something that's like it's really, really far away from us. Indeed. You've got people who have a recent memory of things. I'm sure Malcolm X's children are still alive, aren't they? Martin Luther King's wife is still alive. This is like, in very, very recent memory. And I think to myself, so all of that can happen to you, but you cannot be angry. You're not allowed to be angry. At the back end of last year, the Hong Kong, the sort of anti-government, that descended into violence at the end of the day. It's kind of, the miners' strike. There's been 2 miners' strikes in the UK. There's a French Revolution. Not only were they angry, they bloody cut off all their heads. Just sort of that. Across every race, the First World War was a horrible war, and it was started by the assassination of Duke that sort of
what's his name?
It started by killing. Can you imagine? It was started by killing. The Biafran War in Nigeria was started by killings. We're talking about and this is it. I don't want to use
inflammatory language. Yeah.
But I almost feel like, at what point are you at war? At what point is this? And if it's a war, then it's like they didn't end World War II by when Japan dropped a bomb on Pearl Harbor, they didn't go and rationally have a discussion. Right? Okay, let's be calm here. They went and dropped a flipping nuclear bomb on their asses. Like they were like, right, okay, we are going to flatten you guys. And you've got black people just so angry, just like, I'm fed up with this shit, fed up with it. Right, okay, you know what? Fine, it's true. I know what they're saying, the logic of like, burning buildings doesn't, but actually, it's kind of what they're saying is that if there's going to be no peace for us, we've got nothing to lose. I don't have peace. So you know what? No one's going to have peace.
Yep.
We are going to go every day to Beverly Hills and bomb your beautiful, you know, shops that we're not allowed to shop in anyway, that we're profiled in anyway, you know, and all the rest of it. And that is what's happening. That's all it is. That's all it is.
And it's interesting. I love all the examples you give, because yes, in all of those examples, do you notice that people were allowed to use their voice? The marches have just been made illegal. So the minute Black people start to use their voice, in the minute there's a cause around this race, oh no, you can't protest now, it's illegal to protest. Since when is it illegal to protest anywhere in the world?
In a democracy.
So
America is meant to be the land of the free.
Exactly. So I don't agree with pillaging, rioting, burning things down, but I absolutely understand the muzzling that has led to this. It's like this anger has erupted. There's nowhere to put it. And you know what? We're done. I'm done now. It's burning anyway. Let's burn it all down. Let's burn it all down. And I think that the minute people really start to, and when I say people, I say Caucasian people, and please don't get me wrong, I don't want to get any messages like, oh, you're a racist too. I've got loads of white friends, loads. I work with white people.
Likewise.
Long. All day long. Love them. I love those that love me, and I just keep away from those that don't have any good interest for me, because I treat people based on the content of their character and not on their appearance and what they look like. And that's, I think, what all Black people are asking for. Can you just treat me like a human?
Like a human being.
Not like a Black man or woman, but as a human being, right?
If you were blind and you were talking to me, would it make a difference? If you couldn't see me and we were having a conversation,
why would it matter? Did I treat you well? Did we get on? Did we have things in common? Why is that an issue? You know? Cam, what are you feeling at the moment? And then we'll talk about the other thing I want.
A lot. Anger. My emotions have been all over the place, to be fair. Very heavy. Very, very heavy. I've been waking up with migraines. I think I told you that. So it's just so much to take in. It's a lot to take in. And people are angry. Black people are angry. We have a right to be angry. We have every right to be angry. We have been oppressed for thousands of years, and people have had enough. Black people have had enough. You know. And like you said, I mean, how ridiculous is it that now, whenever we want to speak or voice our opinions, oh, it's the angry, we're angry, it's the angry Black woman thing. It's, you know, now they've made it illegal. And Trump has put the army, the National Guard, is it the National Guard?
In front of the White House.
I mean, yeah, oh my goodness. So, yeah, and for all the examples Nikke gave, everyone else is allowed to voice their opinions or have their marches peacefully, not get shot at with rubber bullets, by the way, or tased or arrested. They've arrested so many people. What, for just marching? For just marching and wanting to give their own voice. Oh, yeah, no. Really angry. Really angry, to the point of sometimes I just don't know how to articulate it.
So with that, I don't know what the rest of you guys have had in terms of experience over the last 11, 12 days since this happened. I've had lots of calls and conversations with white friends who are calling and asking me how I'm feeling. And I'm laughing because I'm sorry to laugh, but the questioning is all around, you know, how are you feeling? And then we feel so horrible about this. And, you know, God, I don't know how to actually say this without being callous sounding. This is back to just not wanting the message to be lost. Yeah. But I appreciate the sentiment. I reject the, how do I say it? I appreciate the sentiment, but I also quite reject the message, because everyone is almost acting surprised that this stuff happens. And I find that in the past, I would spend my time trying to make them feel better. Oh, you're a good person. You're not like them. You've always been so great to me. We are friends. You're not racist at all. And I thought, this time I was like, do you know what? I love you. You're my person. Stop this thing you're doing. If you disagree, do something about it.
Exactly.
Because nothing here is surprising. It's shocking.
Yeah.
Because we saw a man die on television. I don't know about you all, but I haven't seen that. So I saw a man die on television unexpectedly. I didn't expect. I was like, what's going on? What? He's not breathing? Are you joking? That was shocking to me. Is it surprising that it happened? No, not at all. If you go and watch the video of Eric Garner, who in 2016 was killed by the police outside the shop, it is identical. I'm not joking. Identical to what's happening now. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. They were on his neck. He died outside that shop. That was in 2016. So how are your friends coming to you? And how do you feel about what they're saying?
No, none of my white friends have called me. So you've got some nice white friends.
Wow.
I was just about to, yeah, you got a real nice white friend.
Angry back email
None
from
of
you.
y'all. Like, I don't want to deal with that right now.
Delete.
Nobody. I have to tell you, Uzoda, this week I spent the whole entire week on LinkedIn this week. And I have engaged with people who I don't know, people who I don't care to know, and people who I would love to get to know. And I think what you're describing is tone policing, which itself is a form of racism. Who are you to tell me how to express my emotion on an issue that is deep-rooted and long-standing? It's a bit like telling someone how to grieve, or you're trying to tell someone how to celebrate, or you're trying. What qualifies you to tell me how to express my emotion on something that is my reality? It's not your reality. It might be your perception, but this is my reality. How can you validly tell me how to sound, how to express my emotion, how to talk, how to explain it? It's just part of the microaggression and part of the racism. And I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn this week trying to explain that very point to a few people, that the fact that you feel compelled to tell me to lower my voice, or you're engaging with me because you want me to make you feel better, is your privilege.
Better.
In my world, with the people that I'm, who are shouting right now, we don't have the privilege of doing that. All we have is this emotion, that need that has been contained for so long. It's like being in a pressure cooker. It's been in this containment for so long, and finally it's getting an outlet. So I've been inspired this week. I've loved watching all of the reaction. And when people tell me, oh, I don't agree with the looting, I don't agree with, so it makes you more comfortable to voice out on the reaction. But watching a man get killed, it somehow doesn't invoke a reaction.
You're blind to it, exactly.
You're blind to it because the man in question is Black.
Indeed.
So when I see that dynamic, I'm very quick to jump in there, that you have your priorities so skewed because of your privilege. Your privilege is blinding you from so much. Your aggression or your anger should be at the fact that you just watched another human being's life being snuffed out on television. Not because you see people looting. Those things that they're looting are replaceable. This man,
you're going even one step further, Tolu. You're talking about those people who are who haven't spoken about the injustice of what happened and are now to George Floyd and are now speaking about the reaction to the injustice. I'm even taking a step back to those people who genuinely really do not agree. They saw what happened to George Floyd and they were appalled. And they were appalled and they reached out and they expressed their sentiment, sincere sentiment about how sick it made them. And I challenged that sentiment because just as the policemen that stood around the car and watched this happen have been, well, judged by the court of public opinion as being complacent, so too are our fellow really good friends who see injustice all the time, but never say anything about it until it gets to somebody's dead, right? I was explaining to a friend of mine that before I started working, I sat down and I considered very seriously what I wanted to be called at work. Did I want to be known as Uzo or did I want to use my Christian name? Because I had to consider whether using Uzo would hold me back from opportunities. And I said this to a colleague of mine and she looked at me and she goes, "What?" I go, "Yes, that's white privilege. You don't have to think about who you are. You show up and they give you stuff." I had to be strategic at 21 as to how do I position myself in this world to ensure that I have access to as many opportunities as possible so that I get something. It's not natural to consider what name you're going to be called. My name is my name. But I have to consider that you don't. That's white privilege. It's white privilege not to think about how you show up at school gates in the morning wearing pajamas. How many of you guys have moms that used to show up at the school gates in their pajamas?
No.
If I did that as a Black woman, I would be tarred with, "Oh, there she goes on the door, no work, just using up all our resources in the UK, and just taking our things." But and we would, let's say we drove up in the exact same car, and I was dressed up and you were dressed in pajamas, nobody would ever judge you that way. She was probably running late this morning.
Yeah.
Being a mom is tough.
Being a mom is so hard. So, I think, I used to believe that we have a duty to educate our Caucasian counterparts. That belief has changed for me. I believe that it's really up to you to educate yourself now because so much information is available. If you really care, then you start to think about what impact, what unconscious biases do I hold that I'm not even aware of. Start to challenge how you grew up and the things that were said in your household, which were absolutely just really normal, not racist, but they had this, not overtly racist, but had this tinge of undertones of discrimination. How do we help our white friends?
And I think that's the issue. Like going back to Mary's story about her daughter in school, the thing about is that after all of that's said and done, if that teacher still doesn't recognize that what he's doing is racism, then that's what's really scary. That's why it keeps, and also all of these killings, to me, it's like standing in an apple orchard I work in communications, and everything is about the lens, how you say it, how you perceive something, you know, the spin you put on something. You can stand in an apple orchard, it's an apple orchard, and you know it's an apple orchard, or someone else could come in the apple orchard and say, no, it's a field full of apples. So if you've got people being, you know, killed on the streets all the time, you know, and doesn't, I mean, like, I'm not making George Floyd a martyr. This is a man who has got a rap sheet, as long, you know, he's been in and out of prison. He's, you know, I'm not saying he was a wonderful human being, but Ted Bundy also wasn't a wonderful human being. He killed hundreds of girls, and he, in fact, some women lost their lives on the basis, on something really awful, on the fact that he was given so much latitude because he was charming and educated and white and good looking, and they just didn't believe that he could have committed these heinous crimes. I always say Ted Bundy was a black guy, a lot of women wouldn't have lost their lives, because they would have, like, right from, yeah, it's definitely you, locked him up, you know, that kind of thing. You know, so even he, come on, let's be honest, even he wasn't murdered on the streets, you know, and you know, and it's just, oh, just lost my train of thought now, but it's, yeah, but it's that, yeah, exactly. So it's that kind of people understanding that it is systematic racism, because people are still saying things like, you know, oh, if it was racially motivated, how many black guys need to be killed by white police before you're in an apple orchard, as opposed to a field full of apples, you know? Do you know what I mean?
Immigrants who come into this country tells them to take a life in the UK test. It tells them to go out and educate themselves on what it's like to be a British citizen.
Mm.
The choice is not given on whether they want to get the education. They are told to go and get the education. It's not my job to educate you on prejudice, racism, or aggression. If you want to align yourself with what I'm thinking, please educate yourself before you and I have this conversation. And then the apologies flooded in. I'm
Oh
so
gosh.
sorry.
But you see, that's why I don't really care about all these statements these companies are putting out and all of that stuff. They're all great. Optically, they look fantastic, and it's the right thing to do. But as you say, it's drafted, it's prepared. It's the right thing to do.
It's all just showing face, to be
Yeah.
very honest.
It is. It's basically
Exactly. It's all PR, firefighting.
This is it. You know, crisis management. Okay, great. We did say something, and you know, Nika, definitely, I'd love your opinion here, because this is what you do. You're in comms. You know, so there's crisis management. You have to do that. You put these statements out. At the end of the day, you know, I definitely believe that organizations don't really understand how to communicate about race, and therefore that's why they don't do it. They don't know how to have conversations about race internally. I find that I'm, you know, in my work, I'm constantly coaching my clients to, especially my BAME clients, to manage up. So my clients tend to be around director level. And so they'll have ED, MD above them. And I find they get really frustrated, because they'll say, you know, I've been at this position for 3-4 years now, and I should be moving up. I do so well. My performance reviews come back so well. And I know that there's a prejudice. How do I have that conversation? So I'm helping them kind of manage their line managers to get those guys to see how bias is stopping them from progressing. You know, so I help you, individual, become more strategic about how you're putting yourself forward, so that at the end of the day you can go, here is all the stuff. For you to hold me back, you need to give me a damn good reason why. It's not subjective. Now we have evidence, proof, base. But then also managing the line managers to start to have these conversations. How do we help people have these conversations better? Nike, I'll ask you, because from your comms perspective.
Let me just close the door.
Okay.
God, you know, I suppose last question by sharing an experience I had in the civil service before I left. So what happened was that I didn't get onto the civil service fast stream, not because I'm not clever enough, but it's because the exams are too hard. They were harder than my cleverness. So I didn't get on the civil service fast stream, but I didn't give up. I thought, right, what I'll do is I'll just go in the long way. I'll get it, you know. And I literally started at the bottom. I was I was the assistant to the HR director, you know, her kind of go get the coffee girl and all the rest of it. And basically just kind of, right, had this plan that I would stay on each level just for a year and just work my way up. So did that, you know, and then I was supporting her on a project. And so I said to her that, oh, actually, if I did the Prince 2, it would, you know, would really help me to kind of understand the language and be able to like note take better and things like that. And she said, oh, that's a good idea, you know. And I was like, yeah, you know. So she sponsored this assistant to do, you know, like basically an admin person to do Prince 2. And then I, you know, and you know, that's basically how I then got into comms in the civil service, because I went through projects and then did stakeholder engagement and did the comms on projects, and then, you know, sort of moved into corporate comms and just did it that way. But did it in the same time it would actually take you to do the fast stream. So the fast stream takes about 4 or 5 years, and it took me 5 years to get into senior management, and that's even with having 3 children. So what happened was that at the time, the last department I was working in before I moved to the private sector was Department for Business, and then, you know, every now and then it's like a cyclical thing. It's like fashion. They decide, oh, we want to be more inclusive. We've got to look at, you know, we've got to look at our numbers, and, you know, why don't we have more you know, black directors and, you know, stuff like that. So then they did this exercise where they go around and they started to talk to people about their experiences. You know, so basically they would choose, I happened to be one of the people that they decided that they were going to talk to, and they wanted me to share my experience, you know, moving up in the organisation, and that kind of thing. And I thought to myself, right, okay, so I thought to myself, when I look back, I think, I don't know whether I took the opportunity to, because at the time I could not articulate what the you know, those microaggressions, I couldn't articulate it, and I didn't want to talk about something I couldn't articulate, because I knew that it's going to be it's all evidence based. It's not about being emotional and just being like, well, I feel like this, she made me feel like that, this, and, you know, I thought I need to learn the language. I need to be able to wrap it up and say, right, so this situation happened, or, you know, that. And I think that this is probably what's missing, because I don't know, it's like, you know, you can feel like you're not good enough. You can be made to feel that way, but they're not, you know, they didn't drag you out and you know, publicly flog you. They did do something that you can point to. And so, you know, what you're saying here about, you know, they're not, you know, like people putting out statements, they're not even talking to their employees
about it.
And so they looked at me as this example of the fact that, well, it shows that Black people can progress, and so maybe it's to do with you, it's to do with the individual. And that's actually right and wrong. It is right in the sense that, because I'm not, I wouldn't say it's because I'm Nigerian, but because I grew up with with parents that were kind of like, listen, it's really hard. You've got to work twice as hard. You've got to be able to approach. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And I was full of fire, and I was just like, I'm just not going to be held back. Yes, there's racism. I'm going to find ways around it. You know, I'm going to, you know, maybe I'm in a meeting. I see someone who's impressive. I, you know, drop them an email, you know, really love the way you did your presentation, you know, I really want to mentor, you know, and that kind of thing, you know, and then you align yourself, you build contacts, you know, you're this really nice, you know, cheerful Black lady, everyone likes you, you know, do you know what I mean? You do that whole thing, you know, you're not a threat, you know, you go on the drinks and stuff like that, you know, you're someone that they can relate to and feel very comfortable with. You never talk about racial issues. You know, even if there's a terrorist attack that just happened, you know, you say things like, oh my God, like, you know, I heard you at the so-and-so festival, and, you know, you do, and I did do a lot of things like that, where just like, right, okay, I need, you know, that making people feel comfortable and getting, you know, and then you think to yourself, what I think is that the people that probably didn't get as far as they wanted is because they wanted to be treated equally. I'm not gonna, you're not paying me the same, so I'm not gonna work twice as hard. I'm not, you know, that whole, and I think as Africans, we are really taught, and that's why I think that's why we do so well, because what we do is we don't fight racism, we work around it. Whereas I think that Black Americans and also Caribbean people, they don't work around it, they fight it. So white people think they're aggressive. You know, they will say, well, actually, why, you know, that, you know, they will sort of, you know, speak out. Whereas we will find, you know, the ways, you know, like, okay, I'll get that, you know, I'll go and do my PhD, I'll go and do that, and I'll, you know, whatever, and, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that it was in this moment that I actually started to think, this is where you stop the damage. Do I do what my father did and say to my children, you know, you're Black, you're gonna have to work twice as hard? Why should they work twice as hard? Why should they get a master's if you can get the job with just a degree? If you want to do a master's, that's nothing wrong.
Exactly, without a degree.
I was 24 years old before I realized that people did not have to go to university. As a Nigerian child, my parents are still disappointed that I still don't have my PhD. That was a crack. I did not know that people could work in the workplace without a university degree until I got to my second job, and my boss, his boss, my colleagues, none of them had been to university. I was the most educated person in my department. I was confused.
NVQ level 7. That's it.
I was like, what? And I said, why are we killing ourselves? Because
we're not white.
We have to strive harder. You know, I wrote something at the start of the week where I said, you know, Black people are held to very high standards and at the same time, very low standards as well. So when it comes to achievement, we have to be the best. We have to be better than everybody else in order to achieve. But then the smallest thing, look at the example that Mary just gave us about her daughter. Esther, just walking past. So they see a Black person and they have the lowest thought, you are Black, so therefore you're going to do something wrong. So how do you keep, how is that even possible? How do you appease people that expect such high standards yet but have such low expectations, you know, at the very same time? Frustrating. It's frustrating. And you know, in organizations, I actually do feel sorry for organizations because it's a tough nut to crack. And if it's not built into your culture, it's really, you know, almost Titanic super tanker type challenge, turning that thing around. But that, I think, is where we are. And if we were to compare the two things metaphorically, the rioting and the protests in the streets, to me, in my mind, really equates to having to turn these super tanker businesses around and say, you need to address these issues differently. And it's not about getting some D&I department and thinking that you're doing something.
But you know, another reason why that is, if not just damn near impossible, but definitely really hard, is because the people at the top, when I was in the civil service, what I noticed that the civil service fast stream is full of middle class white people, not even middle class, not even working class white people. So you've got race and class as well. So that's just another layer to it. It's full of middle class white people, talk a certain way, have certain shared experiences, you know, and they want to be together. They want to attract and be with other people who have, you know, like, oh, you know, like when we went skiing or when we went, you know, and they talk about things that, you know, like, because I was brought up in the UK, but I was brought up in a very Nigerian kind of way. Also, I was brought up in you know, I'm working class parents. You know, I lived in a council flat for years before we, you know, things like that. So even just things like learning to move in the circles of middle class white people. So even my friends, you know, my Nigerian friends or other Black friends that went to boarding school and you know, who went to private schools, that, you know, that they were a little bit easier with their language and their, that kind of thing. But even that kind of thing helps. Now the problem is that the white middle class, they just exist, they're in a bubble. They don't, outside of work, they probably don't have many black friends. I live in Oxfordshire, and
They don't have any.
yeah, I live in Oxfordshire, and so now I can see that, right, so these are the people that work in the in the cities and office where you work, or they're all white. So I'm now in their, I'm sitting in their circle. Do you see what I mean? So like, how do you then expect them to sit in their office and write a statement about or understand the experience of, the black people in, where so it's kind of like it can't even start from the corporate organizations. It needs to start in the ground,
I think it's something that's really scary. And as a mother, I don't know how you guys are. Cam, your kids are still small. Tolu, your children are girls. Nike probably will align with me a bit because she's got a son. And my son is 13, he's going to be 14. He is a tall 14-year-old. You guys know, he doesn't look like he's 14. He looks very easily, right in this minute, like a 17, 18-year-old. Mm-hmm. And when he had his growth spurt, that first growth spurt, my heart would pound when he left the house. And I would say to him, at no costs, Tosin joined the call. At no cost on your travels, do not put your hood up anywhere you are. Make sure that if you are with a group of boys, you guys are as civil and as not as rowdy as children.
As quiet.
Just not even be quiet, but just don't call too much attention. And he was like, why? And I was like, because you are a black young man and you are the picture of what, for whatever reason, causes lots of people to be totally scared out of their mind and to make very irrational decisions. And next thing I know, I'm getting a call saying my son is wherever, God forbid. But that is a thing, that is a real thing that I don't think a white person would ever understand, that you would say to your child walking out the door to go to school, do whatever.
But I think what's, Uzo, I hear you, but I think what is really going to bring about change is making them understand it. I know it's unfair that we have to be put in the position of actually going through it, right? Being the ones to experience it and then being the ones to educate them. It is what it is. Okay, it's not a fair world in any aspect of anyone's reality. We all know that. White, black, Indian, Asian, it doesn't matter. It's not a fair world. And so I feel like that is just, our task, right? It's that understanding. And I have so many stories to tell you about the last 2 weeks. It's been such an emotional journey this last 2 weeks. I mean, when I say emotional, it's George Floyd is not the first black man that this happened to. It's happened to so many black men, so it's the reason why we've all been forced to actually pay attention is someone somewhere said, you know what? Enough. That person caught on with somebody else. And now there's a mob, whether you're rich, poor, in the middle, white, black, not black or not white, there's a mob outside your door forcing you to face it. And so even when you can wake up and get on with your life, the mob is saying, no, I'm going to stand out here until you acknowledge me. And so we're all forced to acknowledge it. And what I'm beginning to realize in the past 2 weeks is just residual resentment. You don't realize as a black person how much you're carrying around.
Everybody, welcome to Tosin. Cam had to leave, but Tosin's taking her place. Go, girl. And I was explaining actually before you joined in exactly what you were saying about.
Sorry, I'm still here. I'm just.
Oh, you're still there. Okay. Are you leaving now, Cam?
I just need to get inside the house. Sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. So are you going to stay on the call then?
So I'm listening. Yeah, I'll stay.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. So so what I was saying was that, yes, exactly, that, we need to educate them. And that I don't in any way expect them to understand what it's like to be Black, just like I don't understand what it's like to be a Black
No,
person in America.
no.
I'm sorry, but
You
I
don't. No, I
agree
don't
with
agree
you.
with
I
that.
don't think
No,
it's
I'm
our
sorry.
job. I don't think
I
it's our
don't
job
agree
to
with that.
educate.
I'm so
I
sorry.
don't
I
think it's
had
our
that.
job to
no,
educate
they
people.
go and educate themselves. Remember, I said I believe they should educate themselves in the past. Now it's about you educating yourself. I'm not here to make you feel better about feeling bad. Go and do something about it. But I don't expect. We're talking about how to talk about race in corporate environments, and how
I'm done being quiet. I'm done. I know that this is going to go online. So you and I talked about it. I know Comcast is such a huge, corporation. We just bought Sky. I have a woman in tech. Right. I have a woman.
Tosin is a senior director at Comcast in the States. So very big job, very huge company. And yes, there could be issues in the past, but she's not first now.
So I know this is going to go online. I know it's going to be seen one way or the other, right? We have a big hub, Sky, corporation in London. I come to London quite a bit, Uzo, as you know. So it's going to be seen, and I'm fine with that. I'm actually not. I'm done being quiet, and I'm saying that boldly now because I know the steps I've taken internally. You know what I'm saying? It's just time now. Comcast is not any special kind of company that did some kind of special wrong thing. No, they're just the average American, organization. Now, have they done some really impressive things to kind of, bring awareness for diversity and inclusion? Yes. We have a huge, initiative around diversity and inclusion. We have, people that are actually, their job titles are VP, SVP for, diversity and inclusion. They are attending to it. They are addressing it. There's actually an internal policy around it. But is it effective?
That's
Well,
that's always the question. Exactly.
Let's talk about that. So that conversation is going to be had. One of the things I did when all of this started, going on was I penned a letter. And the funny thing is, when you go to church, I'm a Christian. So when you go to church, your pastor will encourage you to, do prayer meetings, meet in small groups. And I've always understood that to be so that your life is not, just a Christian life on Sundays. It kind of has some kind of continuity, right? And so one thing I've noticed about, aside from continuity, small groups, having conversations in small groups is so effective because you can actually reach, you know what I'm saying, and actually have that conversation from different perspective and actually reach one person or the other. So one of the things I said was I'm going to apply that same small group, approach on this issue across my organization. I may not be able to change an organization of, 190,000 people, right? But maybe I can change my own peers and my direct manager. So I sent a letter out to them. And at first, it was the first time. I haven't watched the whole George Floyd video, but it was the first time that I had seen some of it. I was so angry, the kind of just unhealthy anger. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, okay, this is not going to do. I have to do something. It's happened before, Sandra Bland. It's happened before Eric Gardner.
Gosh,
I didn't do anything
Eric
about
Garner
it.
was exactly
so many.
identical.
It's the exact same thing. The guy literally said the same exact words. I can't breathe. There's nothing different about that situation.
There was a guy in France who literally said the exact same thing as well.
His name was Adama
Calm down.
Yep, said the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So this has happened before. It's deja vu. It's nothing new to us. But I was so mad seeing it, and I just remembered. I said, you know what? I can go to work the next day. I had a bunch of, this week was so busy. I can't even talk to you about it. It was crazy. I can't talk about what was happening internally outside of this, but it was huge. I had so much to attend to. And I was like, am I going to go into this next emergency meeting and just say, hey, good afternoon, guys. How are you? Okay, let's, and act like nothing happened. I'm sorry. I just couldn't. And am I going to go and be disruptive? Well, I just couldn't. I do have a professional, responsibility. I do have a corporate responsibility as well. So I was like, okay, where's the middle in this? And it was on Sunday. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to address the people that I know have some kind of vested interest in my life, right? like me, love me. They're my peers. We have to communicate pretty often. And we all have that connection to my manager because we report to him. Yeah. So let me start from there. So I penned the letter to them, and the letter, I sat right here in the mini by the kitchen. And I was typing and I was quietly crying, tears coming down my eyes. And my husband was like, whatever you do, don't send it. And I was like, Sam, stop talking. Just walk away and let me do it. And he was like, just don't send it. I know you're emotional. Just don't send it. And I was like, just let me be. The first draft of it was really angry. It had no place, in corporate America. I was calling them out for things that they didn't even know I was angry about in the past. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then I deleted that. I started again. I really took my time. And eventually what came out was just a note that just was asking them to be empathetic. Yeah. I started off with something simple. They always make fun of me about, I'm not a big pizza fan. I don't, so things that they can relate to. I don't like American food. I like my Nigerian food. So I started with, I go to this market that is on Walnut Street in Philadelphia. I'll be the first to tell you that it looks shady. It looks very seedy. What's to say, it's true. I'll be the first to tell you that. What's to say that I get, and they don't take credit card at that market. They take only cash. What's to say I get a, $20 change, from that market. That money passes from me to my husband because we share everything. He goes into my wallet all the time. I do the same to him. And he runs to the CVS here, which is far away from that market. We live in the suburbs, to get medicine for my son. And the next thing, police, like 6 police cars are facing the CVS. And he's like, okay, what's going on? Who are they here to arrest? And they're like, sir, raise up your hands. And my husband is like, oh my God, what is it? He has no idea he has a fake $20 bill.
This is it. Which is the whole reason George Floyd was
It's the whole reason George Floyd was shot.
$20.
What's to say? And they all know Sam. They all like Sam. So I said, what's to say? You have to also remember, George Floyd is 6'5" or 6'4", something like that. My husband is 6'4". George Floyd is black as night. If you turn off the lights in my house, you may not find my husband. He's dark skinned. Like seriously, he's dark. So, and then he's bald, by choice. He likes to shave his head. You know what I'm saying? It thinks it makes him look better. And then he's just athletic. So he just looks, to me, really good, to you, threatening.
This is it. This is the
thing.
Okay,
but to a cop, to a CVS guy who just took a fake $20 bill from him, oh, that's a thug. Right? And so,
and that's the
now they've approached my husband. My husband, before he's even like, what happened? What's going on? He's face down on the pavement. He makes it home that night.
Yeah.
That's what we have to live through. It's not that it happened to Sam, it's that it could happen to Sam. Yeah. That's the fear that we have to live with. I said, if you want, I'll do a FaceTime video and I'll show you my husband's closet. You'll be hard pressed to find black outfits. Because it's so dark and he wants to appear non-threatening, his closet is full of lighter toned outfits. It is a conscious decision.
And these are the things.
My husband is not, my husband is not going to go out, in our neighborhood. We live in a very nice, neighborhood. But he's not going to go out he's out now. He's out with the kids. He loves to run. He's athletic. He doesn't run anymore because he was stopped one day while running in our own neighborhood. And the police said, why are you running? And he was like, I'm exercising. And then he was like, can I see your ID? He was like, officer, I don't carry an ID to run.
Jogging.
I'm jogging. And my husband is overly polite to police officers. We've had a conversation about that. It's, to the point where he had to explain to me that I'm doing it to stay alive. I'm not doing it to punk out. I'm doing it to stay alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. He could be shot.
But you have to also think about that. Yeah. It's emasculating.
It is.
Oh, Tosin, this is so heartbreaking. Oh my God.
It's emasculating.
That is the racism. The fact that you have to create this alternative reality, alternative
it is
to
deep.
Stay alive and just function as a human being. I swear, this week I've been triggered in all sorts of ways. It's unreal.
Marriage is already tough enough. So to your point, You know, we're already having to deal with the normal things white people have to deal with, you know, making sure your marriage is healthy, making sure your children are healthy. You know, our alma mater is going through a rape scandal right now. We're not paying attention to it. We can't. We have to first of all pay attention to just being treated human. And then we can address being treated like women. Right.
Yeah.
Think about that.
That is it. That is it. That is it. And that is earlier on, we're talking about white privilege and the things that we in our lives have to think about, the nuances and how to navigate through our life and what we need to consider about making sure we do or not do to ensure that everyone around us is comfortable so that we can just be perceived as non-threatening or
exactly,
you know, just decent human beings, because benefit of the doubt is something that doesn't usually show up because people are making snap.
No, it does not. It does not. I can give you so many examples.
400 years of history embedded in their brain. They don't even realize they're doing it.
Nature. Yeah, it's
and some of it is not even the history that is embedded in their brain.
It's now.
Some of it is just the upbringing. Yeah, I'll tell you. So I grew up in Nigeria. I moved here. Growing up in Nigeria, like literally, racism is just not an issue.
It doesn't exist.
I mean, you just don't even, it doesn't exist. You don't think about it. So you grow up kind of feeling what the average African American would call entitled. But it's not an entitlement of material. It's an entitlement of human rights. We're just,
I'm here.
Well, wait. You know, why do you get to do that and I don't?
Exactly.
We're just equal. You know, so you come to.
Let's not forget that there's tribalism. We could talk about that another time.
Yeah.
But racism,
in Nigeria, there's things like classism, tribalism, sexism. Sexism is a big one. That's a topic for another day. Don't even get me triggered on that one. But having to create this false sense of you in order to make somebody else comfortable and see you as non-threatening just did not exist.
It just, and that's what I was trying to prove. That's what I was trying to share with them, is that, you know, what we wear, my husband's closet, you know, the look of his closet alone, how we talk. If you meet Sam, he talks real proper. He doesn't speak Ebonics. I speak more Ebonics than he does, and I grew up in Nigeria. You know, I don't mind throwing down at any time. Sam just doesn't. Because he's made a conscious decision that he does. Sometimes he doesn't even know he's made to be, you know, to kind of be less threatening. It's just his lifestyle. You know how when you want to lose weight and they'll be like, "Oh, don't go on diets, make it a lifestyle." It's just a lifestyle thing for him, to where there's no distinguishing between what, you know, he does when he's, you know, around his family and what he does outside. It has just become him. He's very, you know, his voice is like really deep. And so you hear him sometimes, he's like really low toned because he's trying to subdue. I'm like, what the heck? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just, when you think about all this of his life and the conscious decisions, I'm like, well, damn, they might as well just define who we are.
He's trying to take the bass out of his voice.
Exactly, he really is. And in a way, thank you for bringing that up. I said that in the letter. I said, in a way, because when Sam and I are alone, oh my God, you know, do you know how many times Sam and I have been talking and I'll fall asleep? It happens all the time. I'll fall asleep. Not because it's boring, because I'm tired, you know what I'm saying? Or you know, he's just a chatterbox. And my kids, when people say, "Oh, your kids are exactly like you," I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But I know they're exactly like Sam. They love to talk. I actually get drained when I'm around people for a long time. I need to go away and recharge. Sam loves to be around people. But guess what? He's very quiet. I do think that naturally he's an extrovert, but there has been a conscious effort to pull back and to be quiet so that, you know, people don't perceive him as threatening or abrasive or anything else. And so he tends to be a little more reserved. But once he's around people that he knows, my sister, his family, you know, my own family, oh my God, you know, the floodgates just open. You know what I'm saying? So, and I was trying to make my team understand, like, these are the things that happen to us every day. My husband doesn't go out for a walk without his family. Either I'm working with him or the kids are working with him. Why? Because if he's working with one of us or riding with one of us, he's less susceptible to being perceived as a threatening Black man. He's more likely to be perceived as a family man.
I mean, it's a bit difficult to take your
indirectly, the
children on
people that he's
a
supposed
heist with you. So
Yeah.
Bank robbery.
assume that the motives of being
undertone
out are not
exists.
nefarious. Absolutely.
The people that he's supposed to be protecting, and you know how black men are. Black men are very, they're very protective men. They like to be macho. So the people that he's supposedly, meant to be protecting and to be there for, they've become his shield.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Remember, I
He's
said
gotta live
earlier
with
that
that.
we can't know what it's like to be black in America.
No, we can't. This has really, honestly, this has really opened my eyes to so much because
So, we all have, it just shows that there's degrees of privilege, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was about to
Us being
say
black,
that
British, we are privileged above black
British
Americans.
black privilege.
I said this to
phrase.
somebody on LinkedIn today, that privilege has no color. It has no color and it has no class because there are degrees to it. I'm in my organization, being the only senior person who's black. The other people in my organization who are junior to me see me as privileged.
Yeah.
This week, I wrote a list of everyone in my organization who was black. And even though I'm on leave, after I had the failed conversation with my chief exec, I'll tell you about it another day. It was one for the books, I swear. I had to call each and every person in my organization who was junior to me and tell them that I share the same experiences as you. Yeah. Don't look at the org chart and think that Mary's different because she sits on the exec team. I don't. I probably feel a lot more than you do because I'm being required to double up on my influence, my qualification, my badge, my this, my that, in order to be deserving of a place around
Quadruple up. Quadruple up.
But don't feel like I have a position of privilege. I feel just the same way you feel. If there is any reason that you feel you need to have a conversation, please do not hesitate to call me or talk to me at any time of the day. I wanted to make it so clear to them that having a black person on the executive team is not privilege. Yeah. I don't want to be perceived as separate from them because of my position. I feel the same pain, maybe even more than they do. And my chief said to me, "Oh, well done, Mary. Good on you for doing that." And I thought,
honestly, I hate that. I hate actually being that black person that is on that executive board or in the senior leadership team or the rep, the face.
The token.
And they go, "Oh yeah, they must be okay. They've got a black woman on there. It's all good."